these dark days.
David Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I found much to agree with, frankly, on the opposition spokesman's comments, as I did indeed with the ministers. I mean, today's move to prevent Russian banks and businesses from accessing our financial system and banning key exports to Russia are much needed and, frankly, long overdue. We should have been doing some of these things, not all of them, some of these things some time ago. Yesterday, the Foreign Secretary said this legislation will immediately apply to Sberbank, VEB, Sovcombank and Okriti. These measures will undoubtedly inflict damage on the Russian economy and punish the Russian state. But we must go further. Now, it may be that I've not completely comprehended the Minister's intentions in this, but I think the Honourable Member for Rhondda made a very good point. Why are we only applying this immediate legislation to those specific banks? Why not immediately apply it to VTB, Gazprom Bank or Alpha Bank, Russia's second, third and fourth biggest banks? Now, I know the Americans have sanctioned the same banks in the same way, and I assume this is to protect the operation of the fundamental European infrastructure like oil and gas. This was the point I was trying to draw from the spokesman for the opposition, that whether we are trying to ensure that we do the maximum damage to Russia with the minimum damage to our allies if we have to maintain this for a long time. But I'd be interested to hear the Minister's answer as to why we've done this. Because by excluding those banks in the immediate term, we will to some extent undermine our own strategy. Time's against us. Troops are bearing down on Kiev as we speak. The longer we wait, the longer Ukraine and her people will be subject to indiscriminate missile strikes and the terror of Putin's forces. Similarly, I would like to hear from the government what we're doing to stop these measures being bypassed by Russia's erstwhile friends, allies and fellow travellers, China, India, Brazil. Because again, if we allow 30 days and those countries are willing to facilitate it, Russia can bypass a very large component of what we're trying to do. There might be ruble support operations going on from China, for example. How are we going to cope with this? Because if we do not succeed in this strategy, we'll risk Ukraine, frankly, being turned into a European Vietnam, a prospect too horrible to countenance. Now, as damaging as today's measures are to the Russian financial system, they're not going to hit Putin where it hurts most. And for that, we need to target many more of his allies. A number of honourable members have made this point already, but we need to target many more of his allies and facilitators that have, frankly, bought their way into British society. And that's what's really missing from these statutory instruments today. We need to target those owning businesses on our stock exchange. We need to target those owning London homes that we can no longer afford because of Russian operations in London. We need to target oligarchs who own football clubs which many of our citizens can no longer afford to attend because they're so expensive. Now, for too long, we have turned a blind eye to dirty money flooding into the City of London. And a number of people, the Honourable Lady, as my successor as Public Accounts Committee Chairman, has a very strong record on this. And she will know that we have failed to use the tools we already have to tackle this. I mean, for example, since 2017, we've had unexplained wealth orders at our disposal, forcing a suspect, in theory, forcing a suspect to reveal the source of their wealth. And failure to do so results in the property under consideration being seized. Well, since 2017, only 9 of those orders have been, 9 against 4 people, 9 of those orders have been presented. Only 2 of them have succeeded. That I will, of course.
I'm very much enjoying his contribution and thank him for what he said. Does he not agree with me that actually until we target the enablers, the accountants and the lawyers and the banks who support individuals or companies in laundering dirty money, until we target them, we will not hit the heart of that dirty money industry that we're trying to attack in the legislation?
The point she makes is one that has been made by my honourable friend for Isle of Wight and a number of others in this, and I have a lot of sympathy with the point, but we have to be careful in this, that we don't take away ordinary citizens' rights in how we deal with the lawyers and the accountants and so on, or indeed the proper rights of any individual. But I agree, and there has developed, in particular in the sort of lawfare area, there has developed a huge industry of enormous margins, enormous profit levels by various law firms in particular, who have developed the tactics for defeating the government in imposing proper laws. I give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you. I thank you for giving way. He raises a very important point, and likewise the honourable member for Barking. So you look at a company like CMS that took instruction from a Minister of the Interior official, but actually he was a front for organised crime in the Magnitsky case. And you can say, yes, should organised crime have legal representation? Yes. Should foreign organised crime have legal representation? Well, potentially. Does foreign organised crime have the right to hire companies like CMS to try to use lawfare to attack freedom of speech and to attack Bill Browder in this country? I would argue not. And therefore, I think that is the debate that we should be having.
Well, and indeed, we had that debate 4 weeks ago, on the lawfare debate, which the Right Honourable Gentleman and I sponsored, and he took a sterling part in fact, probably the most informative speech in the whole thing. So yes, we have to address it, but that's a difficult area. I think there are quicker areas we can work on right now. Bear in mind, we are talking about time being lives today, so we have to work fast with what we have. Now, as I said, the NCA was only able to successfully bring 2 unexplained wealth orders out of 9. But the truth is, they have 100 targets sitting on their files. 100, not 2 or 4. And they can't pursue them. The evidence was given to the ISC in the Russia and reflected in the Russia report, in which Lynn Owen, I think the then head of the NCA, said they simply couldn't afford the huge legal bills that they were facing. And of course, the truth is, what no agency head will say, is also they frankly don't have the huge calibre of skills that these oligarchs with virtually infinite quantities of money can employ. So the question is, how do we get the Serious Fraud Office, HMRC, FCA, CPS and NCA all to use this legislation properly? Firstly, we must make sure the costs of unexplained wealth orders are brought under control from the state point of view. Now, again, we've got to be careful that we don't undermine the rights of an ordinary citizen. So we may say the rules we talk about only apply to unexplained wealth orders, let's say, of more than £50 million or something like that. That's not going to worry the ordinary citizen, and put a cap on the expenditure. But we also have to use the private sector. We have to actually say this is a national emergency. We have to ask for everybody to put their shoulder to the wheel, and we must make these UWOs work properly. The NCA has a list of 100, but those of us who took part in the lawfare debate know there are roughly 140 Russian oligarchs who should be in the target list. Not all of them in Britain, but should be in the target list because their money may be in Britain, even if that's not the case. So it seems to me that there is a very, very serious issue here, which should have been in today's SIs. This is something, because I do worry about the government moving so slowly that its prey escapes it, that the people who are effectively the enemies of the people of Ukraine by proxy get away with things that we shouldn't allow them to. We must fight fire with this and beat these oligarchs at their own game. And I'm going to pick one out, because we've already seen the results of actions taken so far. Oligarchs scrambling to protect their own reputations. Right? Oligarchs like Roman Abramovich, who we've seen doing things in the newspapers in the last few days to protect himself. Now, according to the Spanish National Intelligence Committee, he is the man who manages, or at least one of the men, who manages Putin's business affairs. That's a really important issue about whether he should be on our target list. He's a man who has refused Swiss residency permit due to suspected involvement in money laundering and contacts with criminal organisations. And a man who, when his UK visa was up for renewal, chose to withdraw his application when it became clear he would need to explain the source of his wealth due to the changes we introduced in 2015. So I'm just picking one, but I could have picked any one of 100 plus to illustrate that there is information there. There is knowledge there. It's not a question of being unable to identify the individuals. It should not have taken a war for us to start. I'll give way to.
I'm grateful to the right honourable gentleman who's making a brilliant speech. Yeah. Could he just give us his perspective for the House on this potential weakness in the sanctions regime? Because the focus of the sanctions regime is obviously on asset freezing. Abramovich, who is widely regarded as Putin's cashier, has obviously tried to take preemptive measures by transferring control of Chelsea Football Club to a charitable trust. But there is a real issue that the mansions, the jets and the yachts, which are owned by oligarchs, will be continued to be available for their use, because actually the regulations do not prohibit the use of economic resources for personal consumption.
That's true, and also we have to face facts in terms of the sophistication of the targets we're aiming at. You know, those assets he just talked about, the blocks of flats, the grand houses, the yachts, are probably owned by 6 or 7 layers of companies through various Cayman Island, BWI, whatever, offshore entities. And it's incredibly difficult, actually, even for the state to find out who it is, which is why these unexplained wealth orders are at least the first weapon we should sharpen up. And that's also a reason why speed's important. Every day we give to these people allows their advisors to develop more and more sophisticated tactics of concealment, tactics of distraction. I mean, in at least a couple of those unexplained wealth orders, it turned out that the state was pursuing the wrong ownership because of distraction tactics. So it just seems to me that both speed and determination and sophistication and clear targeting, which is not difficult given what I've just been saying, are all critical to succeeding in this. So it shouldn't have taken, as I was about to say, a war for us to start rooting out dirty Russian money in the UK. But we are where we are, and we mustn't wait any longer. So what we have to do starts by going after the 140 or so oligarchs that have been identified as having direct links with Putin. We must take this action immediately to make clear to these corrupt oligarchs their money is no longer welcome on these shores, and indeed it's unsafe whilst they continue to provide financial support to Putin, whatever they say in the public press, if they continue to provide financial support to Putin. I would like to have seen it started today in these SIs. Sadly, it hasn't. Hopefully it'll be in next week's economic crime bill. But frankly, if that takes weeks as well, every single week is more lives lost, more opportunities for these people to escape justice, and frankly, a worsening of the chances of us rescuing the Ukrainian nation from the fate in front of it.